Welcome back to the How Did It Happen podcast. This is Mike. I am joining you today for a solo episode, and we're going to talk about something really cool. Yesterday, I had a fantastic day. I had my monthly Vistage meeting, and that is, for those of you who are hearing about Vistage for the first time, that is a group of people that I get together with, a group of CEOs, every month, pretty much. And we have a full day of learning. We learn from one another, and we learn from, oftentimes we learn from a speaker that comes in and presents to us for, 3 hours or so. Yesterday, we had a speaker at our Vistage event. His name is Chris Nielsen. And I am going to talk about 6 things with you today that we went over yesterday in really, really great detail. It was one of those ones where super interactive, like Chris was telling us about these 6 cool ways to build engagement and trust with our inside of our companies and with ourselves as leaders. And we were really debating these things because none of these 6 things are easy. And I thought I would do a podcast episode about the 6 things, but really bring my own take to each of the 6. And of course, as you know, my goal here is to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you. And I think that going through these 6 things will certainly inspire, hopefully activate, and, with your own spin on them, maximize your greatness and your ability to impact the people around you or the people in your company. If you do want to find out more about Chris, go to his website. It's Chris Nielsen. That's NIELSON.com. And he's got a ton of great stuff there. And he's a really great person. So connect with him on LinkedIn or wherever as well. So let me get started. 6 cool ways to build engagement and trust without ever using the words engagement or trust. And I'll tell you why at the end, why I think that's important. The first is the way that you accept information. So the way that that Chris actually defined this was yes and. So yes, comma, and. And I had heard that before. And I, even before Chris brought it up, I have been convinced that yes and is a super powerful way for you to accept information from people, whether you agree with the information or don't agree with the information, without alienating the person who's bringing you the information. So, for example, most of us have been taught to say no. Someone comes to us with something that we don't like or we don't agree with, we say no. And when we say no, we can, it all depends on environments. It depends on how close you know people and all of that stuff. But generally speaking, when we say no to someone as a leader, for example, we can alienate them. We can make them feel like bringing us an idea that we didn't like is, I guess, maybe the first step to not bringing us any further ideas. And of course, leading a company or leading any type of organization, you definitely want people coming to you with ideas. And so no is first. And then I was taught at some point to say yes, but. Yes, this is like to a client request that we would normally have to say no to. We would say yes, but, and then we would frame the answer in a way that, basically told the client how we could actually do what they were requesting. So rather than saying, no, we can't do that because we couldn't, we would say yes, but, and then we would frame it in a way that we could actually do it, which may or may not be what they're asking for, but it was definitely a way of affirming their request and then, pivoting, I guess, or shifting to another answer that we could actually live by. And then, and as I said, even before we talked about it yesterday, I was I was told, or I was influenced to, or I was encouraged to, and I don't remember exactly where, to say yes and instead of yes but. The reason is that, at least the way I was told, and I think this is true, when people hear the but, they hear a no. So when you say yes, but, they may very well take that as a no. And we already talked about why you may not want to leave someone with a no. So, and you might be saying, well, if the answer is no, the answer is no, and that's true. But if we and we talked about this a lot, but if you say, yes, and you're not saying no to the human, you're not saying no to the person, but you may still very well say no to the idea or the suggestion. So we're trying to preserve, with engagement and trust, we're trying to preserve people's their willingness to come to us with ideas. And we're also protecting our delegation capabilities as well, because if we can't delegate to people because they're afraid to come to us with an answer that maybe isn't the answer we would come up with, we're probably going to stifle that person over time. So number one is yes and. Number two is listen. And I've talked about listen a lot. I've written about listen a lot. And, listening is really, really hard, right? That's what people say. It's hard to listen. Well, no, it's really easy to listen, right? We're built to listen. We've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. You've heard that. Use them in proportion, and you'll always be listening more than you're talking. But but more than that, we make it hard to listen. I do, and all of you probably do as well. We make it hard to listen. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we put ourselves in situations where listening is really tough. So we don't invite someone in at an opportune time for us to listen, for example, or because of that, they're more of an interruption. And when someone is an interruption, we are less apt to, be really listening to them. The other thing is we often, and this sounds terrible, and I know I do it, and I try to stop myself, but I know I do this. I listen to respond instead of listening to accept. And when I listen to respond, I'm not really listening because I am formulating how I want to go back at the person that I'm supposed to be listening to. So I'm listening to myself, to my own brain, work through what my response is going to be, as opposed to listening to the person that's right in front of me, giving me something that I should be considering and accepting. Again, whether I agree with it or not is not important. Considering and accepting, as opposed to, using the time poorly from a listening perspective to be formulating how I want to respond to what they're saying. So number 2 is listen. Number 3 is be present. And this is something that is a big challenge for me and probably a big challenge for all of you. I know that I struggle with it, especially under certain conditions, and I'll talk to you about those conditions. But it's one of those things like listening that we say, wow, it's really hard to be present. And it's really not hard to be present. It's easy to be present if you make the choice to be present. And why do we often not make the choice to be present? Well, a couple things. One, we don't invite, in order for us to be present, we don't want to invite interruption. And sort of like what I was saying with the listening, if someone just pops in on you and with something important to talk about, and you're not ready for that, and you accept that interruption into your life, the likelihood, and you're working on something else, and the likelihood that you will be fully present is diminished, right? Because it's hard to just switch gears. When you're focused on one thing, you have to, stop and focus on another. It's very, very difficult because that thing is in your mind. Just like with listening, that response is in your mind. With with the challenge to being present is you've got something else in your mind that you're working on or focused on, and it's difficult to switch gears quickly. So I wouldn't invite interruption. And people don't expect, I don't think, generally to be interrupters. They're totally good with scheduling something or asking for permission or doing something else that gives you as the leader an opportunity to sort of, okay, be prepared for it, or slow down, stop what you're doing, and then get prepared to be present. Second thing is, and this is really easy, but we make it very, very hard, and that is, I do my best. Again, when I haven't invited an interruption, I do my best to put my phone on silent and in my pocket, and I do my best to not have a screen between me and the person that I am talking to or who is visiting me. Just those, avoiding the interruption and just putting those screens away helps me, focus and be present and be a good listener with the person. I will tell you that it's very, at least in my observation, having your phone on the desk in front of you, or the table in front of you, or the place where you're eating, having it on the table, is very common, very common. And even I'm like completely aware of it, and I still do it sometimes. It's very common, and I think people don't understand or don't realize or maybe don't care that having that thing on the table in front of you, or anywhere where you can see it, or any screen where you can see it, is you inviting presence difficulty into your life, because and you're also telling the person that whatever's on that screen or whatever's on my phone is more important than what you're saying to me right now, because you can't help not look at it if a text comes through or an email notification comes up or whatever the case may be. So just simple tip that's worked for me, not perfectly, but that has worked for me is, don't make being present the result of an interruption, and put the screens away. Put your phone in your pocket or put it somewhere where you cannot see it, and not flipped over, because even when it's flipped over, it is telling the person that my phone has to be right here with me because it's more important than you. Excuse me. Number 4, make your people look great. I just watched I guess it was a webinar this morning with Drew Brees, the former quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, and it was basically about leadership. And Drew was saying what I think we all know, right? We all know this as leaders. It's like our job is to make all of our people look great, so they get all the credit when things go well, and we take all the responsibility when things don't go well. So easy thing that I think everybody gets, but my observation is that even though we get it, we are very, very challenged by it. And I don't know why. Even I know that I see that that word I is something that, it's got a place. It's first person. When you're talking about yourself, that's the proper pronoun to use, I guess. But when we are in a leadership situation, we and you are both words that are much more powerful than I. So I'd say we and you is, if you want to honor people and make them look great, use we and you to when you're talking about a win, and use I when we're talking about a loss or a failure or a not quite yet or whatever you want to call it. That way, you are always giving your team and you're always giving your people the opportunity to look great, while you are at the same time always taking the responsibility for things that didn't turn out right. Now, that doesn't mean that, behind the scenes, you're not having good conversations with people about why things didn't work out, what needs to be done differently, maybe who didn't, hold up their end of the bargain. But that's not something that needs to be out there in the public. That's something that you can take care of behind closed doors. And even if that is the case, I always say you have to win with the team that you have, right? So if that's the team you have and you can't count on someone, no sense blaming that person. The blame is, right in front of you. So, or right at you, look in the mirror kind of thing. So make your people look great. Number 5, we had a great discussion about this one. So the way Chris put it was dare to suck. And like some people didn't like the word suck, and or they don't want to put a negative word out there, and I can appreciate that, and I don't know if it's the best word either, but so after a lot of talking about that, we kind of settled on dare to fail, suck, or be not yet great. Whichever one you want to choose, you can go ahead and choose, but the point is how readily and how often and how accepting are you of giving people an opportunity to stretch their capabilities inside your company or inside of your life for that matter, and be okay if they don't, hit it out of the park. Be okay if they don't deliver the result exactly the way that you wanted it to be delivered. Be okay for them to say, I'm really stuck on this, and I could use some help to get to the end of the road. How do you, embrace, create an environment where you're embracing people's willingness to take on risk without the potential for complete failure. See, people know when they don't make it. Almost everybody knows when they don't make it exactly right. But it's the learning, and it's the effort, and it's the progress towards that creates the new capabilities in your company, that creates new capabilities in your people. So having an environment where people like that they can dare to fail, suck, or not yet be great is very powerful. And I think, and this is just my own experience, but I think that it's rare. It's rare too inside of companies. And I feel like it needs to be more or less rare. So dare to fail, suck, or not yet be great is something that, just really recommend you sit back and kind of put that thing out there and see what happens. You may be really surprised. The number 6 thing was create a safe environment, and this psychological safety net, I think, is what Chris said. And this, I think it came out of some Harvard Business Review study, but it was the number 1 thing, evidently, that made people feel engaged or disengaged about their work. And we had a really great discussion about this too. And here are a couple of things that came to my mind. First of all, I in my own companies and in the companies that I've sold to, there is and has been a tremendous, and I will say tremendous, emphasis on physical safety. And by physical safety, I mean not getting hurt, not getting injured. And there's a lot, of course, there are great reasons for that, right? Because you don't want anyone to get injured. You want everybody to go home the way they came to work. You want your safety scores to be good. So there's a whole lot of good reasons why that concentration on physical safety is really important. But what about the rest of safety? Like so say you have a safe environment physically, meaning people aren't getting hurt. That's great. What about how safe is it otherwise? How safe is it for people to do the dare to fail, suck, or not yet great thing, and not feel like they're going to be punished, degraded, demoted, fired, or whatever. And I'm not one of these people who say, hey, nobody should be fired, nobody should be disciplined. To me, that's unrealistic. But how safe? Like, for instance, Chris used this thing. He said, is it like concrete, or is failing like falling on concrete or into a net? And I hadn't heard that before. I thought that was pretty neat. Concrete hurts, and you don't want to do it again. Where a net is safe. You fall into a net. It's like, oh, okay. I can climb out of the net and I can try it again. So I won't, I'm going to get better, and I'm not going to get hurt getting better. Whereas if I fall on concrete, I'm going to get hurt, and my mind, my brain is going to tell me, don't do that anymore. So creating a safe environment. Now, here's the thing with it. Of all of these, they're all hard, but I think this one is the hardest, and here's the reason why. You've heard you can't just say you create a safe environment, and you as a leader can't just say you create a safe environment and assume that everybody in your organization is also prepared to create a safe environment. And I think that, you go down different levels of management inside of a business, and it's hard to control. And control might be too strong a word. It's hard to influence. It's hard to control. It's hard to monitor. It's hard to correct. It's all kinds of hard. And on top of that, people come into your organization from all different kinds of backgrounds and experiences. And for example, if I came into your business and I came from a place where you got slapped down if you made a mistake, for example. Slapped down hard if you made a mistake. And that hurt. And I come into your business now, and you tell me, oh, it's, we got a safe environment. We encourage collaboration. We do all of these things. Am I going to believe you right off the bat? Well, I'd like to. I'd like to believe you. But my experience and my, amygdala, or whatever part of my brain is activated by what had happened to me before, is going to say, wait a second, I wouldn't take that at face value. So that's what makes it really hard, and I don't have the answer for it, and I don't think any of us did talking about it, except to say that, walk the walk, talk the talk, and that's not just one person, that's not just the leader, but it's like hugely important that everyone that is working with people inside of your organization believes in that, no concrete. We provide nets, not concrete mentality, because if they don't, the word gets around and you become one of those organizations where you talk about being safe, but you don't make it safe. You don't ensure that it's safe. And how you do that, I'm assuming the only way to do that, and the way I think I've done that, but I can't be totally sure, is to talk about it all the time and correct when you see something happen or you hear about something happen that doesn't seem like it's supporting that safety. So, if people stay safe, feel safe, they're going to, I get that. They're going to, perform. They're going to want to perform at a very high level. They're going to want to challenge themselves. They're going to want to make you look good while they make themselves look good as well. So create a safe environment. Do what you can to do it. Talk about it all the time. Make sure you're hiring, particularly in the management area, people who believe in that, because not everyone does. And like I said, they may not because they don't want to, but just because they've never been exposed to it. They've never been trained on it. They've never been in an environment where that is not just okay, but it is encouraged and supported and all of the other things. So I'll end with trust. And this is just my personal opinion on trust. As soon as a company or a person starts talking about how important trust is to them, I get a little, like the hair on my neck and the hair on my arms sort of stands up a little bit, because I don't think, this is just me, I don't think that trust is something you lead with. I think trust is something that people say about you. They say they trust you. You don't come out and say, trust me, because I just think that puts people a little bit on the defensive. And so if your marketing is about trust or you're having conversations about trust, I say, I worry about that. And instead I would do, like, for example, these 6 cool ways to build engagement and trust without ever saying those words. That's the strategy I would use, because you've got trust when someone says, I trust you. You don't know you have trust when you say trust is a core value, or we strive for trust, or we are trustworthy. So just something to think about. I think that these 6 things that we've talked about today and we talked about yesterday are just really, really interesting and exciting and challenging. These are all very challenging, but if you want to have the best company possible and you want to have the best people around you possible in your business life or your social life or in your family life, pay attention to these 6 things and think about them and think about getting better at every one of them. So that's my little solo rant today. I hope you appreciated the information. If you've got something you want to share with me, shoot me an email or write me a comment, and I will definitely address it. And until next time, I hope that I inspired, activated, and maximized some greatness in you today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of the How'd It Happen podcast, where we believe that success doesn't happen unless you make it happen. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to listen. And while you're there, please rate it and leave a comment as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show, ideas for future guests, or whatever you'd like to share. And of course, you can always find me at MikeMalatesta.com. See you next time. Thanks again for listening to the How'd It Happen podcast.